I'm writing this from a hotel lobby in Lisbon while a man at the piano plays songs I almost recognize. I don't think I'll send this to you. Maybe that's why I can finally write it honestly. For 9 Christmases in a row, you spent the holiday with your wife's family. The first year made sense. They lived closer. Her grandmother was ill. You told me gently, almost apologetically, and I remember hearing myself say, "Of course, sweetheart, we'll celebrate another day." I even meant it. The second year felt temporary, too. By the third, people had stopped asking whether you were coming. That was harder than the actual absence somehow. Watching everyone else quietly adapt while I still behaved like the arrangement might change. I learned to cook less food gradually. At first, I still made enough for leftovers out of habit, then enough for 2 people even after your father passed. Eventually, I stood in grocery aisles holding ingredients I no longer needed, doing arithmetic against loneliness. One small ham, half rechacy, no extra chairs. Every December, I told myself maturity meant understanding that adult children create new traditions, and I do understand that. What I never understood was why the understanding only traveled one direction. This Christmas morning, you texted me at 8:14, a photo of all of you standing in matching pajamas beside your in-law's tree, your father-in-law holding your youngest. Everyone smiling with that sleepy, intimate look families have before noon on holidays. Love you, Mom. We'll call later. I stared at the message long enough for the screen to darken. Then I reheated coffee I'd already let go cold once. The thing that finally unsettled me wasn't the photo. It was realizing you no longer explained. There was no, "I know this is hard," no, "we'll alternate next year," no conversation at all anymore. Just a settled assumption that I would continue waiting professionally and quietly forever. I almost didn't cook dinner that day. The potatoes stayed on the counter until afternoon because peeling them for one person felt strangely embarrassing, even alone in my own kitchen. At some point, I looked around the house and noticed how much of my life had become temporary in anticipation of other people. I kept the guest room exactly the same in case you visited unexpectedly. I avoided traveling during holidays, just in case plans changed. There were places I once wanted to see that slowly turned into ideas people describe about themselves rather than realities they pursue. Funny thing about motherhood. Sometimes the role survives long after it's still being requested. That afternoon, while dishes soaked in the sink, I opened my laptop and booked a flight to Portugal for New Year's. I'd wanted to see Lisbon since I was 32. I remember reading an article about the tiled streets and the ocean light while you were asleep upstairs after a fever. I tore the page out and kept it inside a cookbook for years. I found it again last month. The trip itself frightened me more than I expected, not the flying. The visibility of being alone. At the airport, I became aware of myself in uncomfortable ways. One older woman with one suitcase buying one coffee. No one waiting for me at arrivals. No one tracking whether I landed safely except a neighbor who watered my plants. When I told her I was leaving for Portugal, she blinked at me like I'd announced something medically concerning. By yourself. I almost canceled right there from embarrassment, but embarrassment has ruled enough of my life already, so I came anyway. The first 2 days felt awkward and overly quiet. I walked too much because sitting alone in restaurants made me self-conscious. I kept reaching for my phone to send photos to people who probably didn't need them. Then something shifted, not dramatically, just slowly enough that I almost missed it. I started waking up without immediately checking whether you had texted. I spent entire afternoons inside museums, moving at my own pace. I ate dinner near the water one night while listening to conversations I couldn't understand. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the day to become meaningful through someone else's arrival. 3 nights ago, another American couple asked where my family was. "My son's with his in-laws for the holidays," I told them. The woman smiled sympathetically. "At least your husband came with you," I said. "No, it's just me." She looked surprised for half a second. Then she said something small that has stayed with me since. "That's brave. I don't think this is bravery. I think it's what happens when disappointment finally becomes expensive enough to interrupt. You called me on New Year's Eve while I was walking back to the hotel. It sounded loud where you were. Plates clattering. Children shouting. You asked why I never mentioned traveling. I almost apologized automatically. That reflex still lives in me. Instead, I said, I guess I stopped assuming anyone would ask. You went quiet after that, not angry, just confused. And maybe that's the saddest part of all this, sweetheart. I truly don't think you meant to leave me behind. I think we both got too used to me staying exactly where you last needed me.